So who here likes root beer floats? Hi, hello, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Quill, and I do art somewhat professionally. For context, I have been doing art for about 15 years now, which is weird to think about that it's been 15 years since I started doing art a little bit more seriously than just constantly drawing on any piece of paper I could find. But I am now the crisp age of 24, and I didn't do anything for my birthday besides eat cake. So, webcomics. We all love them, we all hate them, we all have a mixed feeling on them. Some of them are really exceptional. Some of them you question whether or not it was a good idea to ever look at the internet. However, today I want to talk about how webcomic etiquette online almost ruined my own webcomic. For context, I started a webcomic in 2019, involving my characters, Gold and Will. And it is now 2025, and I still have yet to even finish chapter 1. However, that is changing as of this video. This is not an official announcement on it, but I am in the beginnings of working on the graphic novel for my comic, instead of doing a webcomic, and this is kind of why I wanted to talk about this, because there almost wasn't a Malorious Psychosis, which is the name of my webcomic for those of you who are new. There almost wasn't because of how webcomic hosting sites are. It can be really hard to maintain any form of a webcomic if you don't already have an entire storyline, all of the dialogue, and all the plot points pre-done and way ready before any type of release. So let's say you're planning on doing a webcomic that has 147 pages, has 5 different chapters, 7 different plot lines, and is about Sans Undertale and Shrek. I don't know where I'm going with this, but you get the gist. If you don't have that pre-planned out and already completely finished before you start posting it, you might risk running into the webcomic burnout TM. It's not actually trademarked, but it just sounded cool in my head. When you run into this slump, it's because of one of two things. One, the pressure from the hosting site to post an update essentially weekly or bi-weekly at the minimum. Some are a little bit more lenient and allow up to a month, but most people use Webtoons, and Webtoons kinda shoots you in the foot if you don't update your comics weekly or bi-weekly. It sucks. And it kills any kind of motivation or momentum you might have when doing your comic. I experienced with the first official version of Psychosis. I'm using that in the biggest quotation marks ever, because that was not pretty. There were technically 2 early phases of Psychosis. One that I was going to be posting on Instagram that only had 1 post, and the other was the one version on Webtoons that we don't speak of anymore. My third attempt at getting Psychosis off of the ground was my very brief time on Comic Fury. Now, I can't speak much to Webtoons because I had a very limited experience on it, and I don't have any other experiences with any other comic hosting site besides Webtoons and Comic Fury. However, that didn't stop the issues for finding a hosting site. Comic Theory is, in my opinion, one of the better online comic hosting sites, besides Tumblr or something like that, where it's fandom-oriented or AU-oriented. Comic Theory works in a very interesting way where they don't necessarily hide comics, but you both have the main page, which shows you which comics has updated in that day or week, and you also have different forum pages where people can promote new chapters, new posts, new updates, etc. to those forums to keep people engaged and to keep new viewers coming in. Webtoons, on the other hand, has kind of awful visibility, just awareness in general. There are tags, just like there are on most art hosting sites. However, if you're not posting weekly to bi-weekly, which is, I'm saying bi-weekly in the terms of like 2 weeks, you are essentially handicapped. I'm using that term loosely because there's a lot of other factors as well that go into it. So it could be just genre in general. Some genres aren't pushed that much. Some tags aren't pushed as much. And if you're not part of their creator program, you're very likely to not get any kind of decent traction unless you're spamming all of your other social medias and annoying the shit out of everyone you know and could possibly know over your comic. So, it's not really that great. That's why ultimately I ended up hosting Psychosis on my official studio's website, and also have been planning out some comic dubs as well. There's one, I'll put it in a card and in the description as well, that's kind of a prequel comic, little mini comic. And now it's kind of evolved into a graphic novel, because the pressure to find a hosting site that, one, allowed horror content and gore content, because it's a psychological thriller about ghosts and demons, and how that, in a fantastical setting, people who are in distress are more likely to bend to the evils of the world, which is what the main character is going through, and the mental strain that puts on him. So it's less of like a horror like I had initially had planned. It's more of just a psychological warfare on the main character, my poor boy. There's not a lot of sites where that sort of thing is exactly praised. Not saying that I'm writing and working on something that is like 4chan levels dark web kind of thing. It's more of, they don't like seeing people get murdered, and that's kind of an integral part to the plot. So when I was first working on posting it in 2019, I had to go through 5 different sites just to try and figure out what I could post and how much I would need to censor if I did on that site. And a lot of these sites have very hard to navigate or very vague statements on what they allow. Obviously, most of them will be like, hey, don't post non-safe for work. That's not allowed. Go to a different site for that. But otherwise, it's a little bit more gray area on what's allowed. I think my only saving grace when I was posting it on Webtoons was the fact that the comic is primarily black and white, with the only color really being red to, show the blood. Because at the time, I thought that was a really neat stylistic choice. And that's, of course, going to bleed over into the final graphic novel, but I'm adding a little bit extra color and actually doing backgrounds this time. And it looks really good so far from the 2 pages that I've currently worked on as a sort of like style test for how I want it to look. And you'll be seeing that, throughout the video. And, it's so much fun working on webcomics, but so much of the culture around it is just disheartening as an artist, because so much of it is scrutinized. It either has to be the most high quality, gorgeous colored landscapes and characters with this really dynamic feel to it, or it's comedic. And anything not comedic has to be this gritty, realistic, less cartoony style. Like, you'll see stuff with Lackadaisy or I Hope So, where it's these gorgeous backgrounds and these gorgeous characters, and it's not really pushing the boundaries. But then simpler stuff like, I'm trying to think of one, like what Shen Comics does, or even, oh God forbid me for even mentioning it, but the Olympians one, and that one that was scrutinized heavily a couple years ago, about gay people, boyfriends or something like that, I forget the name, but less serialized comics, you kind of are expected to do it in a certain way, and serialized comics, you are supposed to do it in a certain way, and there's not really like any real big push. And a lot of it also comes down to the hosting sites like Webtoons. There's a ton of videos out there talking about Webtoons and their policies and how much they hinder artists. I can't speak as well as those people can. I'll link a couple of those in the description as well. It's such a toxic, I don't want to say fandom or community, but more so job space, because there is kind of that, like, same sort of toxicity that you see in the regular art community that has progressively gotten worse, mixed into that as well. And I found that in a lot of different, like, art hosting sites. This isn't just, like, a webcomics exclusive thing. This is any site. You see it on Twitter all the time with people saying, oh, insert thing here is AI art, or insert thing here is so bad we need to chase you off the internet. How could you even think about posting this type thing? And there's even some sites where you can print things, like have your art print sold, but you have to literally be peer reviewed and judged to qualify to post something. It's awful. And if it doesn't fit that fine art or, poster quality stuff, if it's just like art of your silly OCs that people love, but you don't want to go through like Redbubble or something because they're an awful company, you kind of are out of options. But yeah, because of that, I almost didn't get through finishing up Psychosis because there was just this pressure to get everything done and in a timely manner. Like, I was posting up 3 pages every week, I want to say. And these were like not fully colored, but colored with minimal backgrounds and shading, and it was just, a slog. And I also just did not know how to do webcomics properly at the time. You'll see here is a mix of both the current version that I'm working on and the 2023 edition, as I like to call it, which is available to read on my studio website, for those of you who are interested in the slightly outdated story. But yeah, man, I really hope that we get some sort of, upgrade to webcomics that are more artist-friendly, because it's sad. The standard for making webcomics is harsher than actual comics that have, real-world deadlines and massive teams behind them that can quickly get pages done. And even then, it's like the animation industry. It's very polarized in worth ethics and all that stuff, and I'm not gonna get into that because that is a whole other mess. But yeah, I highly recommend using a site like Card or Squarespace or something like that to kind of do your webcomic on your own site, and also, post it on other sites as well, just to get a feel of it. But don't let those sites pressure you into stuff, Do your comics how you want to. Don't fold to the peer pressure of how fast you need to have a comic out. You'll get that loyal fan base that won't care. I hope you enjoyed my rambling. I didn't really script this, but I wanted to have a little brief convo on, all of that as I drew some silly comics. So, yeah. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next upload. It'll be a fun one. I have some fun things planned, and hopefully they'll be done soon, because I've been spending way too much time trying to get videos done, and then one thing or another happens and it slows it down. But, growing pains. Alright, see you guys in the next one. Goodbye! Thank you all for much. The internet and webcomic hosting site. Wow. Let's try that one again. I had to go through 5 different sites. I just smacked something. I'll have to redo that.